Hi, welcome back to another episode of the FM Channel podcast. My name is Claudio Rojas. I'm one of the co-owners and founders and senior recruiters at Alex Young Recruitment. Today, I'm joined by Aidan Bell, who is the COO at ISS Facility Services UK. Welcome to the show, Aidan.
Thanks, Claudio.
Cool. So just as an intro to anybody who hasn't tuned in before, basically, I'm doing the podcast is about meeting and interviewing people, FM professionals from the industry at different levels, from different companies, different backgrounds, in order to hear their story, how they got into FM, what they know about the industry, what they might not like about the industry, in a bit to basically inspire other people within the sector. So we'll crack on. Aidan, so before we go back to the beginning of how you got into the industry, could you just give us an intro into what you do now and who you do it for?
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for ISS in the UK and Ireland. I look after the private sector part of our business, so the business is split in a couple of ways, but I look after primarily the private sector, the key accounts, responsible for business across UK and Ireland, customers like Royal Bank of Scotland, Aviva Insurance. About 14,000 employees, turnover of just over £500 million. So, wide portfolio, interesting portfolio. And of course, over the last 6-9 months, a really interesting time for everybody.
No, absolutely. And how's it looking now moving forward? Have you got, are you guys back in the office now, or is it kind of still working from home, 50-50? How's the head office looking?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. We've opened the majority of our offices up and down the UK, and we've got a booking system. So if you want to go to one of the offices, you book in, and we're encouraging people to go to where they're based if they want to. Don't have to, but giving people the opportunity to come to the office to collaborate with teams in socially distanced, and every meeting room has a capacity to it. Also to give people the opportunity to get out of working from home and out of our spare bedrooms, out of our kitchen, dining room tables, to go back to the office if they want to. So I myself, I'm primarily based in Canary Wharf, so I've been going out there 1 or 2 days a week for the last 4 or 6 weeks. Velocity, our HQ in Weybridge, is open, so I've been out there a couple of times, and I was in Birmingham yesterday with our team up there, our commercial team. So it's quite nice to go and physically see people again, and you kind of forget it's a people industry, and we're used to seeing people daily and having those water cooler conversations, coffee machine conversations that are a little bit more difficult to engage and have when you have to book a Zoom call. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think Zoom's been great for everybody, hasn't it? But I think, there's the little conversations that you have with your colleagues just over the desk and in the kitchen area that they're all out the window, aren't they? So
it's much more difficult then, and the little anecdotes that you pick up, the little opportunities, you kind of miss out on those. And I think people want to get back to that. It was all very interesting for the first couple of months because it's, somebody asked me at one point, what do we do now? And I said, I don't know. It's my first global pandemic. So we're kind of making it up as we go along. And that's what it was. And I think, the impact of the furlough scheme, the COVID safe environment, frontline workers, key workers, using public transport, all of the things we had to readdress and what we took as natural before and just, the obvious thing to do, we really had to consider and work our way through it. And I think that kept us all occupied and kept us perhaps even interested. But now it's a point of actually, okay, so what does innovation look like in this current environment? What does the future look like? How do we get our teams to collaborate better? So I think there's a combination of getting people into the office in smaller groups. And, I had a team meeting with my guys on Monday of this week, and half of us went to the office, so 7 in the boardroom in Velocity, which is socially distant, and then the other 7 dialed in, and it actually worked very well. So we'll kind of rotate that month on month so that we can get people into the office and people from home, and you kind of feel that connection.
Absolutely. I think people are ready for it now, aren't they? We're all ready to you can feel it's getting a bit tense now. Cool. Great. So that's you now. So let's go back to the beginning then, if you could. How did you get into the industry? Where did it start for you?
By accident, I suppose, is probably like most people of my generation into FM. I grew up in Southern Ireland and did my Leaving Cert, which is the A-level equivalent in Ireland. And was offered a place to study economics at University College Dublin. And I'm the eldest of 4 children. So, you know, mum and dad were quite happy and proud of me heading off to university. And I kind of thought, this isn't for me.
Right.
So I applied for and got an electrical apprenticeship with the Electricity Supply Board in Ireland, and did 4 incredible years as a real hands-on electrical apprenticeship. Worked on everything from domestic installations right up to 400,000 volts on the network and the grid across Ireland. And that was fantastic.
Did you start uni and then say it wasn't for you,
No,
or did you kind of get the place and then decide I'm not going to go?
Yeah, I got the place and knew in my heart of hearts that it just wasn't for me. It wasn't something that, you know, whilst I enjoyed school and education to a degree, it wasn't something I was committed to, and I kind of wanted to get on and do something different, and took the electrical apprenticeship, which was, you know, without, in hindsight, it was absolutely the best thing I've ever done. It really gave me, you know, I was very fortunate. The company that I did my apprenticeship with gave you a real academic grounding, but also a very practical grounding. So it gave you a bit of everything, and you got some business exposure as well. So you weren't just wiring houses or doing, you know, air brake switches in a high voltage substation. You actually had to understand what the business was about. And the guy I worked for at the time was really brilliant at kind of telling me what was going on, you know, the P&L and stuff like that as a normal apprentice, you perhaps wouldn't get that exposure to.
No, absolutely. That's fantastic. That's the first time I've heard of that, actually. I mean, a lot of kind of your classic apprenticeships that I speak to people about, who many people that have done them will always rave about the person that was the lead engineer or the chief engineer that kind of showed them what to do. But I've never spoke to anybody that's done who had the business side of it as well. That's really
and I think I was just very fortunate. The Electricity Supply Board, so the national grid in Ireland as it was then, they had a different perspective. Huge organisation, you know, state-owned type of thing, and the guy that I worked with, he kind of nurtured me, for want of a better expression. He gave me exposure to stuff that I wouldn't normally see, and you would normally see in an apprenticeship. And I kind of soaked it up. I suppose having, you know, my you know, 6 months prior to starting, I was going to do an economics degree in university. So I had an interest in business and accounting and how it all worked. And if you ask the right questions of the right person, and they'll give you insight, and you kind of, you know, I always say behave like a toddler, keep asking why, and you get to understand it.
Yeah. So how long did you stay there for then? After your 4-year apprenticeship, did you kind of move on from there, or did you stay there for a while?
Yeah, I stayed there for about a year after I qualified. I kind of, the apprenticeship in Ireland, you move around different parts of the country to get different exposures, different sites and different disciplines within in the industry. And then I got a job back in my hometown, kind of 21, moved home, and got a job as what was called an area electrician. So dealing with domestic installations, small commercial installations, and then pretty much up to 20,000 kV local distribution networks. But 21, I was in the town I grew up in, you got kind of bored pretty quick, if I'm honest. It wasn't really for me. And I had first cousin of mine had a very small electrical company in Bristol, and he got his first big job, and he needed another electrician to go and work on the building site. Great, so I kind of packed my bag and came to England for 3 months 24 years ago. I'm still here. So it was one of those ones that I was kind of going to just do a bit of traveling, you know, use my electrical apprenticeship, and kind of came to England, worked on the building sites around Bristol, and thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was quite interesting. So stayed and kind of built a career out from there. So it's kind of, I've done a talk internally a couple of times from building site to boardroom as to how that's happened. And I suppose I'm naturally inquisitive. I also have come from, my father's famous saying or favorite saying was, knowledge is no burden. So I like to learn things and inquire about stuff. And I got a couple of opportunities from the building sites. I left the small company that my cousin ran, joined another company. The owner of the company had some health issues, and he asked me to kind of look after things whilst he was having some surgery. He came back, and as he said himself, the company's in better shape now than it was when I left, so kind of keep doing it. And that was my first MD's job at 26. And kind of just went from there, and kind of thoroughly enjoyed having the ability and the understanding of what happens on site. So to run an M&E installation company, I kind of knew what was going on the ground, but I also had a fair understanding of business and the requirements to make a business successful. But it was during that time I really learned that cash is king at that point. And they say turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash is king. And I think at that point that became ingrained in me. And 22 years later, I think I still say that on a weekly basis, because it's that important in the businesses that we run.
No, absolutely. Cool. So when did you? So from there, you ran the install business for the chap who kind of obviously was not well for a while. When did you kind of go into the indoors, into the maintenance side of things, then into FM and maintenance?
Yeah, with that company, we worked a lot for Wolverhampton Dudley Breweries at the time, which is now Pathfinder, I think it's called. And we started doing extraction fan maintenance, emergency light maintenance, and that kind of electrical maintenance, part testing, that type of thing for them. I moved companies at that point and joined another organization that wanted to build a private sector FM business, and kind of we went from hard services, then expanded out into soft and ancillary services. And I think that was where I got a real grounding into FM and a real understanding of the impact of what we do. But at that point, it was a cost line for most organizations that we were working with. It was something that they had to have done. And it was probably not until I joined Balfour Beatty that I realized that what we do can have a significant impact on employee engagement, employee productivity, and therefore the profitability of the client that you work with. I think that's where it really became very interesting for me at that point.
Great. Okay. Okay. Cool. And so, just tell me a little bit about your time at Balfour Beatty. I think that might be the first time that I met you, actually, or had some dealings with you, or maybe after that, actually.
Perhaps at that point, I think it was. So that would have been, I joined Balfour Beatty in about 2002. Business development, working for a guy called Steve Gibbs. Really interesting, some larger scale opportunities. Became national sales director there for a number of years. Again, the private sector business, kind of what I've done most of my career. Thoroughly enjoyed that and learned from it. Balfour Beatty then bought Covian in Reading, and Kevin Craven put me in as MD to do the post-acquisition integration, which was quite an interesting experience. To take a PE-backed or in business and bring it into a large corporate. So I worked on everything from the Emirates Stadium to the Northern Ireland Civil Services Estate, to Britvic, to Logica, across Balfour Beatty. So fantastic clients, a wide range of requirements and services and expected outcomes. So I learned a lot and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Great stuff. Just tell me how do you feel the industry's kind of changed from when you kind of worked, for example, at Balfour Beatty to where we are now? How has it changed for the better or the worse in some instances, maybe, would you say, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because having had, perhaps 20 years in it now, when we started, it was a cost line. If something had to get done, it was a lot of times it was first generation outsourcing. So, there was some profit in it, that there was some real opportunity. I think the industry allowed itself to become commoditized for a period of time. And I think we kind of, I won't say there was a race to the bottom, but there certainly was, costing and margin became something that became very tight and very topical. And customers became more intelligent, and therefore, allowed us to price ourselves to a lower margin.
Yeah.
I think then, now and latterly over the last couple of years, I think people are seeing the benefit that we can bring, that we're not a cost line, that, FM done correctly can have some significant benefits to employee productivity, employee engagement, being the employer of choice for the organizations we provide that service into. And then, latterly in post-COVID, and once we're not post-COVID yet, I think people are really seeing the value of frontline. People are genuinely now seeing that our cleaning teams, our security teams, our reception teams are key workers and actually provide an incredibly valuable service. And instead of walking past the cleaning team or the security guard, they're actually recognizing that they were the ones that were there throughout the lockdown. They were the ones that kept buildings and organizations running. Yeah. And I think we've kind of cycled back to that. And I think what's really important for the industry generally is that we retain the education we've got in the last 6 months, and that we retain the importance of that frontline team.
Yeah.
And you know, I've always said to people who work with me that nobody ever raised an invoice for my time, but we do for the cleaning team, we do for the security team. So our job is to enable them to make their lives better, smarter, faster, whatever it might be. So we've got to focus on that. So I think the industry hasn't been great initially, but I think we've professionalized ourselves and really starting to show benefit, and hopefully we'll continue to expand as we go forward.
I think these last few months, because of obviously the pandemic, has definitely put the spotlight on facilities management. You know, in many respects, I think FM's always kind of been in the background or in the basement or on the roof or whatever, and you know, it's the service that's there that people don't really know that's there, or until they want to complain about something or something doesn't work. Or so yeah, I think that in many ways there are benefits that FM is now in the spotlight a little bit, and hopefully that might attract people new into the industry, maybe, you know.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there's a couple of bits on that in terms of 5 or 6 years ago, you know, we thought FM done well wasn't seen. It was all done in the back, exactly as you said.
Yeah.
We cleaned really early in the morning when there was nobody in the buildings, and everything else was done in the basement or in the roof, and you didn't interfere. I think now people are seeing the value. You know, if you think of, you know, air quality, they want to see the engineers maintaining the air handling units. They want to understand, you know, why the windows can't be open when the air conditioning is on, those kind of things. You can have an engaged conversation with the consumer of the service.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important that we do that as well. I think it's also become quite an interesting industry, in that people are going, well, that's a bit different, you know. And I often say to people, you know, I've been on an oil platform in the North Sea. I've stood on top of a nuclear reactor. I've been to Google's HQ in California, and I've been to the largest shipyard in the world in South Korea, all through FM.
Yeah.
So the world is your oyster if you want to. You know, that there are some fantastic FM opportunities, and to bring, if somebody is interested in running a building, running a team, seeing the world, I think the opportunity is there. And, you know, I myself have been fortunate enough to travel the world because of FM and seen some incredible things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the people that I've spoken to over the years, within Recruiter, within FM, and on this podcast as well, I think lots of people have fallen into FM in some way, but carved their own kind of way, their own career out once they realise that actually, if I apply myself, I can make something of myself within this industry, and it doesn't matter where you start, whether it was kind of as an electrician or a cleaner or an administrator. I think you can really make it's a great industry to work in, I think. And I think that's part of the reason for me doing this, is just to help inspire other people within the sector who might be new within the sector as well, you know, and open their eyes, I guess, to what's potentially out there and where people have come from and how they've got there. What is your take on technology within the sector? Are ISS kind of, from conversations I've been having, tech's obviously making an appearance, is becoming more and more used. What definitely talked about, maybe not used as much as it could be. Some are saying that the industry is not moving quick enough to. What is your take on, or the company's take on technology within the FM and property sector?
So before I kind of comment on what ISS is doing, you know, my view on the industry generally is that we've been late to the party. You know, we've not grasped technology as quickly as we could, and you know, part of the argument is that we're a low single digit margin industry, so therefore the ability to reinvest in cutting edge technology and or expensive R&D just wasn't there.
Yeah.
So we've had to grasp what's available. But then, you know, you've got, you know, great products like Maximo Concept, who are building, you know, great CAFM systems with fantastic user apps that we can get to, and then the availability of the API development that our tech guys can do. So I think we're getting much better at it. I think the industry is great to collect data.
Yeah.
But we know what to do with it yet. So some cases we're doing some fantastic things with data, but other parts of it, we're kind of presenting loads of data to people and going, and you know, the so what question, we're not really answering, or we're only starting to answer in the last 3 or 4 years. With ISS, I think there's a couple of things we're doing. You know, we have a partnership with IBM and Tririga, so we use that product globally, and works incredibly well for us. We then got a number of applications that we've developed, be it engineer interface applications or workplace applications, you know, on smartphones that we're using. And something that we're spending a lot of time now is on RPA, so robotic process automation, so bots in effect. So using bots to do repetitive behind the scenes data entry and data transfer.
Right. Okay.
That's something that, you know, for me, if we've got contract administrators, contract managers, site managers spending time in front of computers inputting data, there's no value in that. So what I want to do is to use these bots, the RPA, to do that repetitive stuff, so that our site teams can get more time with their employees and with their customers.
Wow.
And that's ultimately where it's important. So, you know, engage your employee and delight your customer, and you can't do that from behind the screen. So I think the RPA is a great way of taking some of that repetitive stuff that we just have to do. You have to do data entry in what we do.
Yeah, sure. So is that something that you guys, is that being introduced now, is it, or is that kind of?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. We've got a number of RPA trials and developments underway, and very successfully, you know, and it's the repetitive taking data from one of our systems into a customer system, so you can automate that, and an individual then doesn't have to do it. And we've been really clear, this isn't about headcount reduction. This isn't about removing overhead. This is about efficiency. This is about ensuring our frontline teams have more time to spend with their teams and with their customers, because ultimately that's where the value is derived from.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really good. I was talking to Todd Harrison in the last podcast. I'm not sure if you saw that episode. To be fair, it got released just today. But he was saying that the word technology kind of scares a lot of people as well. There's a lot of tech out there that it doesn't necessarily need to mean losing headcount, and it kind of scare the clients. So I think that we can be a little bit afraid of technology when actually it's just kind of using it to tweak contracts here and there, which will kind of reduce costs for the client, increase margins for the contractors, and it's great. It's just a case of introducing it, I think, a bit more slowly but surely kind of method.
Yeah, you know, I'd agree. And, you know, it's similar to the word innovation, isn't it? You know, we talk about innovation doesn't have to be flying cars. It doesn't have to be, you know, robots cleaning car parks.
Well, this is it.
Yeah, and, you know, innovation can be something really, really small, and that makes a difference because it's something different on a site. And I think technology is the same. You know, we kind of think that if you introduce technology in inverted commas, it's something fantastic that will do something completely different. But ultimately, we have to provide a cleaning service, a security service, an engineering service. You can't replace any of that with technology. What you can do is enable it. You can do data transfer, data collection, you know, real-time information on job completions. You can give surety of completion. You can, you know, there's lots of stuff you can do with technology that isn't groundbreaking per se, but actually is making us more efficient. So I think we just have to be careful in the use of the word, or the definition of the word. And innovation is very similar for me. The definition of innovation is so broad that we kind of shy away from it sometimes, or people think, well, why isn't it flying cars? And that just isn't it, you know.
Yeah, cool. So just to finish off nearly, what would anybody entering the FM and maintenance industry now, what would your advice be to somebody who's kind of maybe just entering the sector where you were, you know, 20 odd years ago?
Yeah, you know, for me, it's more professionalized now. So the opportunity to do some professional qualifications in FM is really, really important. That kind of gives you a really detailed background. So the different levels within BIFM or something like that is really, really important. You know, I'm a fellow of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors myself, and I've spent some time educating myself there. I think that's really important because it gives you the statutory compliance understanding that you need, that perhaps, you know, we kind of had to learn as we went along because it wasn't structured at that time. So I think that's really important. And the second bit is to continue to be curious, because we cover such a breadth of stuff. You know, if you think about from the front doors of a skyscraper in London, and you provide an IFM service within there, there's so much that you can do. So to be curious, to get an understanding of how it works. I think the other piece that a lot of people forget is the customer interaction, the customer relationship. we are a service industry, and we have to do that. And what I love to see is engineers, cleaning teams that, the consumer of the service, the person at a desk in a bank or an insurance company, to tell them that you're coming to do whatever you're going to do, why they're coming to do it, and ask them, is there anything else you can help them with? And that interaction that historically, I don't think the engineering teams did, the cleaning teams weren't seeing. We need to be very, very aware of customer service and the impact that we can have, and not be afraid of that, not be afraid to interact with the consumer of the service. So I think encouraging that. So, and for me, it's about being inquisitive. It's about wondering why and how you can do it better, and trying to see what can be done differently to make it better. And that continuous improvement, betterment, whatever you want to call it, is key.
Yeah, excellent. Listen, Aidan, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man, so we'll call it a day there. But listen, thank you very much for your time, and we'll get this released and hopefully inspire a few people along the way.
Great, thanks, Claudio. Take care. Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.